Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited that you're here with us. We hope that you are ready for this conversation today. Okay. Sorry, I had to press the go live button on IG. I'm multitasking here. Um, so we have a guest with us. We're so excited. This is a budding IG, like colleague connection. I saw Dr. Stiles, one of her reels on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh, this is funny. She's funny,"
Mhm.
and connected with her. And this month is a National Minority Mental Health Month. And I
Yeah.
was like, what better way to have a great conversation than to speak to a BIPOC minority psychotherapist, a psychologist. So, Dr. Stiles, I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself and then we'll get into it.
Sure. So I'm a licensed psychologist. I work in managed care and I also have a private practice called Happy Healing. So I work with a lot of clients dealing with depression, anxiety, these sorts of things, as well as assessments. So I do assessments for DFACs as well. So I do enjoy testing, putting the pieces together, and providing recommendations for the children so that we can have healthy outcomes for them.
Awesome. Now, Dr. Stiles, before we get into the nitty gritty, it's important because you being a psychologist and where you're from is
Mhm.
very interesting. So, where
Sure.
is your family from?
My family's from Jamaica. So mental health is not really that big there. It's not something that's really talked about. There's still a lot of stigma around mental health. And even myself looking into wanting to like move back to Jamaica, they don't pay very well. And there's a shortage of mental health providers there. So there wasn't a lot of information for me to have about going into the field, but there was always a lot of support from my mom on, whatever I wanted to pursue.
Okay. So, good segue because my first question is to you is um do you, what led you to become a psychologist?
So I was literally just having this conversation with my younger sister, and I was like, "What led me to this, Shauna?" And she was like, "I don't know. You've always wanted to do it since we were kids." And I was like, "That's true." So
Oh,
I think that, like, honestly, I think that the career pretty much chose me. I'm somewhat of a chatterbox in my usual everyday life. I love to talk. I love to connect with people. I'm also very much a problem solver. And from when I was a child, I wanted to be a doctor. So I think you put doctor with chatterbox and you get a psychologist. So I think I just kind of naturally fell into the field.
awesome. So growing up, were you born here or were you born in Jamaica?
I was born in California and
Oh,
then moved to Jamaica when I was 2. And
okay.
so I went to school there for a while and then I moved to Florida. And I was pretty much raised in Florida.
Okay. What parts? What part?
South Florida, well, Pembroke Pines is where I'm actually from, but I
Oh,
went to school
yes,
in
I know
Miami.
Pembroke Pines.
Yes.
Very familiar.
Not a lot of people know about Pines.
No, I have lots of family here. Well, my family's from Haiti, so we have
Okay.
tons of Haitians in
Okay. Yes.
especially South Florida. So,
Mhm.
okay. So you grew up, you're from a Caribbean family, and as we know, right, cultured people tend to have there's a stigma when it
Yes.
comes to therapy and things like mental health illness
Mhm.
diagnoses and things like that. So when you were growing up, like what did you hear your family say about therapy or mental health?
To be honest, there's not much conversation around it at all. And I think that that was unhelpful in certain situations that we encountered later on. So something
Mhm.
tragic and sort of like life altering for me is that my brother passed away when he was 15, and my brother and sister are twins. So it was a very huge loss for the family, and he was the only boy child. It was a lot of things wrapped into it, right? During that time, I think it would have been very helpful for all of us to have grief counseling, but it wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even anything that anyone thought to do, right?
Mhm.
So I think the fact that it's not talked about enough keeps people from getting the support and the help that they need, and it impacts us all in different ways, right? And it shows up in unhealthy habits for some of the people in my family.
And what was your did your family when that tragedy happened? Did your family seek therapy, or
You
do
know,
did you do what
we
typical
did
cultural people do?
what Caribbean people do. We went to church and we prayed, and the pastors would come to our house and pray with us. And I'm not gonna lie, that was very healing. That was that in itself was therapeutic for me. But I do still think that a piece was missing in terms of that grief counseling. I think that would have really been a lot more beneficial in tandem. But I will say that that was very helpful for me and my family in getting through that time.
And how old were you when your brother passed away? And my condolences, by the way.
Sure, sure. About 19.
So you were 19. And would you say that's one of the other parts that influenced your trajectory into being a psychologist?
Not really, because at that point I had already known that I wanted to be a psychologist. Like
Okay.
when I was a kid, I would have them sit down, like my brother, my siblings, I'd have them sit down and I'd have the pen and paper. And I'm like, so tell me how your day was. I don't know what notes I'm writing or what I'm doing, but
Right, right.
lay down on the couch and tell me about their day, right? So I
Hmm.
had known from a very young age that that's what I wanted to do. But I think in having these kinds of enriching experiences, it helps you to connect better with the client, right? If you've seen and witnessed abuse, or if you've been through your own depression or your own grief or your own anxiety, and you've come out on the other side, that is very crucial in connecting with clients and helping them through those same issues or similar issues.
No, absolutely. And it makes me think about, and what we're talking about right now makes me think about. I recently came back from the Shades of Blue. They had a Black maternal mental health
Mhm.
summit, and one of the conversations that was had that kept coming up was the fact that we needed more therapists of color, right? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times that's what
And
men as well, men
male
in
there.
general,
Yeah.
and then men of color, and then
Yeah.
women of color. But one of the things that was like the fact that there aren't enough per se, and I was saying in in one of those conversations, I was saying, I've always been the only in every university that I've gone to, like the only Black person. I started out in education, and then I went into mental health counseling. What was that like for you when you went to school? Was it
Same.
same? Hmm.
Same. Even though I went to school in Florida where it's much a
Oh,
joke, because I think it was actually a joke because there
oh,
ended up
hold on one second. We missed what you said because you froze a little
being.
bit. Say it again.
No, I said typically kind of a similar experience to yours, where even though you're in South Florida and it's a more diverse population, I'm usually either the only person of color or one of two. And there was actually a joke
I think we lost her again. Dr. Styles, I think we lost you. Let me see here. So I think Dr. Styles is having some technical difficulties. Hold on one second. Oh, there she is. Oh, I think she's trying to come back on again. So, we're currently talking about being the only person of color in our programs, and Dr. Styles was talking about like she experiences similar of being like the only person of color, I think, in her program as well. So I just wanted to hear a little bit more of what she had to say. She's coming on.
Am I back?
You're back. You're back.
Okay. So sorry.
I know it's okay. I was nervous. I was like, is it me? But I saw
Technology habit.
him in the background, so I was like, it's not.
I tried to just refresh and then it knocked me completely out.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So you were telling you about your experience that being in South Florida, it's a very diverse area, but
You
yet
would think
still.
so. You would think so.
Right.
I think there was one male of color in
Mhm.
my graduating class. and then I think it was maybe 5 to 6 of us women. So definitely not a huge, representative, and not even a representative of South Florida by any stretch of the imagination, right?
Yeah, right.
So I do see that. One thing I will say is that I currently live in Georgia and close to like the Atlanta area, and
Mhm.
it's not the case here. Like there is a lot
Mhm.
of representation here, so it's kind of very different and sort of refreshing place to be.
Right. Oh, and that's awesome.
Mhm.
But it's so funny because I'm in New York and yet and still
It's-
like
Yeah.
still, I'm currently doing a PhD program, and although I'm not the only person of color, there's only 9 of us, and then there's 3 of us people that are uh BIPOC, and then but I'm the only black woman
Sure. Yeah.
in my cohort. And so
Yeah.
it's just like, this is New York City, this is New York. And you would think it'd be more diverse, but
Right.
it
Right.
isn't. But so this month was created with BIPOC people in mind, right?
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes I think other I think white people may wonder, like, why do they
We
need their
need
own
this.
month? Like,
We need this.
what's the difference?
Sure.
Um, and as a psychotherapist, I would what are some of the things that you think comes up for people of color, that our counterparts may not experience?
I think it's just the history, even thinking about why there is such a stigma and maybe even a fear of entering into the medical realm, medicine, therapy, any of that is just like the history of what's happened to Black people in this country when they have sort of trusted certain research projects and things like that, right, that we're aware of. So they have to break down sort of those barriers. There's also the stigma associated with it, right? Like Jamaican people, oh, them just mad, right?
Right,
And
right, right,
thinking like they're depressed or they're anxious or maybe they have a psychotic disorder, something like that. It just gets this umbrella statement, and once it's there, you don't really have to deal with it because you don't really understand it or know what it is, right?
right,
So there's a lot of reasons, and even what we were just talking about, like if I'm going to share something intimate about myself with someone else, I want it to be with someone that I can identify with, right? We know
right,
that 30 to 40% of treatment outcomes is that therapeutic alliance. Do I trust you? Do I value your opinion? Do I see some of me reflected in you? Right?
right,
That's what's going to help me to get better.
right, exactly. That's another conversation that was had this weekend again, in talking about, like, what you just said, how when a person of color is with a therapist that's similar to them in terms of race, there's a certain feeling of just not having to start at the bottom,
Sure.
at that foundation,
Sure.
of like certain, like, traditions and certain, like, beliefs that are just kind of like, what, like, for
Even
instance.
yes, exactly. Especially like that's some of the issues that are, I think, specific to BIPOC population, especially if they're coming from like somewhere else, like the Caribbean or Africa or Indian. There is different expectations within the family, right, and the structure, and that difference between like the collectivistic versus the individualistic mindset. And
Right,
so I've had clients come in from parts of Africa, and they're saying their parents are like, you have to become a nurse. You have to be
right,
a nurse. Like you don't have a choice. Like that's what you have to do. And they
right,
want to do something else, but they don't feel like they have the autonomy to do that. Somebody who's not really trained or understands that would just be like, what do you mean? Just pursue whatever you want, right?
right,
Without thinking about like the ramifications that would have for this person and their family and how they connect with their parents, right? And that
right.
respect that's there that might be a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember talking to my oldest sister, and she still doesn't understand. She's like, what do you mean? Like, people come and sit there and talk about their problems to you? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, and that's what you get paid to do? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I don't get it.
Sure, sure.
That's
But
like,
I
what?
think I think too also there is a misconception that we're just like expensive friends, right? And that's not necessarily what is happening, right? I work at a hospital. We see people with depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, all of these different things that are severe and significant and serious, right? I think
Mhm.
what's happening is that people see what's going on in the media and how therapy is portrayed on television, and they're thinking that that's what's going on. Even on my Instagram page, people think that my reels are therapy. I'm like, this is an audio that I just happened to stumble upon,
Pick
right?
up.
And I
Yes,
thought I'd make it into
yes.
something funny, right? So people don't really. It's a mystery, and it's even a mystery within the field because not a lot of shadowing is
Mm,
being done, and to really see what people are actually,
right.
right? So
Mhm.
there is a lot of mystery underneath it, and people are just kind of making assumptions based off of what they've been exposed to. And if you've not been in therapy, you've not been exposed to therapy.
Right. Oh, yes. I'm glad you said that. And someone said that, like the the understanding, like the nuance and the newness of being in therapy and what does that look like, right? Because some we've never done it, and
Mhm.
what's the expectation when you go to therapy, right?
Mhm.
Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? And I think it's a good segue into talking about like the unknowns and how that pulls that kind of can make
The resistance.
the resistance of
Mhm.
people of color to be able to like say, okay, I'm really having a hard time and I don't know how to navigate this.
Right,
I think I need some help, but I don't know what happens in a therapy session. And
right,
what does that look like? Have you
right.
ever come across that with some of your
Of
clients?
course, right? If people are coming in for the first time, they don't really know what to expect over, what they've seen on The Sopranos or whatever show they were watching, right? And so you try to explain to them that, we're really here, especially because I work in a managed care facility. We're really focused on symptomology and
Mhm.
decreasing symptoms. You're coming in and you're complaining of, I can't sleep. I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling lethargic. I'm crying uncontrollably. My anxiety is through the roof. My heart rate is this. They're describing these symptoms. That's what we want to sort of focus on, is how do we give you the tools to decrease what's going on. And so the way that I do therapy is to sort of acknowledge, like, what's the bigger picture that's contributing
Mhm.
to this, right? So we look at the bigger picture and we look at what's within your control and what you can change. And then we look at sort of the smaller, the micro abilities, which is like your deep breathing and your coping skills, right? So you do certain things so that you can manage, but the big goal is to sort of address whatever that larger issue is.
Right. And I think the other thing is realizing I think people don't realize that it's an alliance, right? It's a collaboration in that,
Yes, yes,
you know,
yes,
so
yes.
and from
Yes. So you're doing some work too. It's not
I
just that the clinician is coming in and telling you
right,
exactly what to. I've literally told clients, like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Like,
right,
it's on you to make that decision. I can tell you what I think from sort of a neutral standpoint or a
right,
therapeutic standpoint, what I think is healthy versus unhealthy, but it's going to be on you to make the choices and to sort of carry it out in your personal life.
right. And that and I think coming from a cultural background and people of color, I think there's this hierarchical like stance of like knowing some people are here and some people are here, right? Like I know, like I went to school in Haiti as well,
Mhm.
and I teachers were like here, like you
Mhm.
never disrespect your
Of
teacher.
course. Yeah.
So and so are doctors and
Of course.
psychologists, and so I tend to find that sometimes that patient clients come in and like you said, they're expecting you to be like, You need to do this, you
Mhm.
need to do this," and it's like,
Mhm.
no, that's not what's going to happen here. And then
Right.
they get uncomfortable leading the way, like
Hmm.
you're going to lead, I'm going to support you as your, what do you want to
Yes,
do?
it's true.
That's very difficult. It can
Hmm.
be very, very difficult in realizing that it's a partnership and not like I'm leading in
You follow.
you know and that can cause some resistance to coming to
Mhm.
therapy as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is sort of getting the wrong sort of match of a therapist, right? So
Yeah.
the type of therapy that I do is very solution focused, and
Oh,
some
good. I was going to ask you what your modality is.
yeah.
Go
And then some people do more sort of exploratory, and then there's all the different models, EMDR, CBT,
ahead.
DBT, all these different things. But a lot of times, the complaints that I've had when I've received other folks' clients is that, like, I didn't walk away with anything tangible, right? Like,
Mhm,
like
mhm,
I felt heard, I felt understood, but I didn't know what the next steps were. I was
mhm,
left still kind of feeling like yes, I feel a little bit better because I got some of that off my chest, but
Right.
I still don't know what to do and I'm still stuck in it. And that's what I was saying before. Like, that is not my ministry. Like, I really want to help people to overcome whatever it is that's the obstacle in their lives so that they can achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve.
Yeah, that's excellent, and that should be the goal for therapy, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think getting to a space where you feel like, okay, I think I got this. I got this under control. What are some of the mental health issues that have been coming up often, like in your recent treatments with clients? Are there any ones that stand have been standing out the most recently in terms
So,
of diagnosis?
because of the type of the work that I do, I work in a intensive outpatient program. So I'm seeing a lot of people with acute symptoms, and the one of the biggest issues is job stress. I have to tell you, I see it
Mm.
all of the time, right? We're in like some very strained economic times. You're as if you turn on, Instagram or social media or whatever, you're going
Mhm.
to see people talking about inflation and all of these things and how the middle class is moving and becoming further and further out of reach. And so a lot of people are struggling because they're in jobs that they hate, right?
Right.
Um,
For lack of a better word,
yeah,
yes.
they hate. And but they have all the other pressures, like my rent still due or my mortgage is still due,
Mhm,
or
mhm.
I still have these obligations, so I have to like stick it out, right?
Right.
And then you're looking at generational differences, right, where the younger generations are like, I'm out of here, and then the older generations are like, I have to stick it out, I've got to grit and bear it, I've got to put everything else before me, right?
Mhm.
So that's something that's huge, is like job stress and finances. Coming out of the pandemic, right? There's a lot of grief and loss. People
Yeah.
lost so much through the pandemic, whether it was like literal people, family members, loved ones that they lost, careers that they lost, your identity wrapped up in the career that you lost, right?
Right.
There was just so many different changes that occurred in that time. And even like for even just the loss of like self and hobbies and things that you used to enjoy. There was a time where we couldn't literally do anything, right?
Mhm.
And so now you're also seeing a lot of folks playing catch up, me included, right? Playing catch up with like traveling and trying to
Yeah.
grab the most of life that they can, because there's now this very real awareness that we could lose everything at any time.
At any time. I saw someone posted it. I don't know if it was a post or anything, but there's this a Facebook group called Black Zit. So
Hmm.
black people who are trying to exit, they're trying to leave America. And one of the things that this guy said, today I bought a gallon of milk, some chips, and some toilet paper, and I paid $65.
Yes. Yes, you did.
And I
Yes, you
was like, oh my god!
did. It's very expensive. It's
And
very
I was
expensive.
like, dude, like people, like it's
It's
a lot out here right now,
it is.
in
It
terms
is.
of finances. And so yeah, so we're definitely, and I know on my end, definitely seeing a lot more generalized anxiety disorders, a lot of
Depression.
depression, a lot of people were just kind of like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it.
Sure. And
Yeah,
then you talking about finances, but then what about everything else that they're dealing with? Like
right. On top
everything
of that,
else that
right?
they're dealing with, right?
Hmm,
Right?
hmm.
Interpersonal difficulties, if they're at a place, even within their job stress, why is there job stress? For some people, they're dealing with sexual harassment. Some people are dealing with micro and macro aggressions, not able to
Hmm.
progress into the place where they think they should be. There's so many things that are going on, and people are wearing so many hats at once that it can be overwhelming.
Right, right. Exactly. And but it's great that the opportunity to be able to seek support is there, but I think sometimes it can be difficult for people to find,
Yeah.
like, okay, I know, oh gosh, now it's like Black Girls Need Therapy, I think. Black Girls Therapy. I forget the website, where people can go in and they can find therapists of color from that website. I mean, it's gonna come to me before we leave.
Hmm.
Um, in segueing into like stigma, I had received a something from the mental health excuse me, the mental health America.
Hmm.
And one of the things they talked about were some myths
Sure.
that can hold BIPOC people back from seeking therapy.
Sure.
And I really like some of the myths that they uh, came up with.
Hmm.
And if you would just like entertain me while I read a
Sure.
few.
Sure.
Okay, so myth one, we kind of talk about my feelings and needing help is a sign of weakness.
Hmm.
um uh what happens in the family should stay in the family.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
sounds very, very, I mean, I know I've heard my Haitian family say that.
Yeah.
why,
Yeah. No.
why do people need to know what's happening?
Sure. Sure. I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. But yes, yeah, that is, I mean, that's something that's very common, right?
Right.
What happens here stays here, but that doesn't create a space for change, right? It doesn't create a space for you to have
Mhm.
correction and get help through those situations. And then it just continues, right? It creates this is how cycles continue because we don't stop it by speaking out and doing something different.
Right. Exactly. And also, there are definitely laws that protect what people tell their, we have HIPAA laws,
Right.
that protect this confidentiality.
Right.
Of course, there are reasons to break confidentiality, but I think most people don't know that, like, your therapist can't just up and tell people, we can't. You and I are therapists, but we can't tell each other what's
Mhm.
happening with our, clients. And I think once people realize that, then they feel a little bit more
Sure.
comfortable and
Yeah.
assured that, okay, it's safe. I don't know your mama. Uh,
Exactly.
I'm not gonna tell her like anything, so
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
okay. Okay, let's look at some of the other ones.
Mhm.
Therapy is for crazy people.
Mhm. Yeah. So definitely misinformation, right?
Right.
Because like we said, that's too large of a umbrella, but it also
Mhm.
doesn't really describe anything, right? And
Right.
it's so vague that you can't really address it. And recognizing that there's many different reasons why people go to therapy. Some people go for specific things, grief counseling, adjustment, right? I'm starting college. I've never been on my own before, and I'm really having a hard time adjusting. A breakup,
Right.
you're breaking up, or a divorce, right? You've been with this person
Mhm.
for 15, 20 years, and now there's a huge grief and loss surrounding that and needing support there. So these are things that everyone's going through. Job stress, these are things that anyone can sort of relate to. So you don't have to be crazy in order to benefit from therapy. And
Right.
even looking at like the fact that you can do an episode of care, right? Where you can
Right.
go for, 6 months and see if you're able to, meet your goals from there. It's not something that you should even be in for years and years and years and years and years and years, right?
Mhm.
Some people do, and they find it sort of like healthy, and it's sort of like their check-in, and it's a part of their self-care, and that's beautiful and that's wonderful. But everything is not the same for everyone, right? And I
Right.
think when they look at what other people are doing, they're like, oh, that's not for me, and maybe that's not for you, but you can kind of figure out a way that it is.
Right. Yep. Navigating what's best for you and not worrying about what's happening on the outside. And I think that's well said. Um, myth four. Mental illness is a white people problem.
Well,
So,
well,
in
yeah.
looking before you go to the answer, because I want to help Sam out. In looking at the statistics, it says that 17% of Black and African Americans, 15% of Hispanic Americans, and 13% Asian American, and 23% of First Nations people live with mental health conditions.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that the issue is the secrecy, right?
Hmm.
And that's why it appears like, oh, it's a problem that they have, versus we just don't label it the same, right? We
Hmm.
don't label it the same, we don't identify it the same, so we can kind of brush it underneath the rug, whereas other people are more open about, this is what's going on, and these are the numbers.
Right. And I think also as well, I think one of the reasons I think people might think that, because recently I did a presentation, and about 67% of mental health counselors, which is what I do, or 67% of mental health counselors are white.
Hmm.
And so therefore, when that's what you see across the
Sure.
board, you're going to think, oh, well, this is not a space for me. Like, I
Hmm.
guess
But
black
I think
people, for
is
white
that not representative of our numbers? How
people.
our number, you know what I mean? They're not that
Right,
far off from our representations being 13% of the population, you know?
right,
So I
yeah,
think, you can't just look at a statistic and not put it in context.
right. And I think also people are concerned about um, uh, getting culturally responsive, like therapy, like
Mhm.
that fear of like um, some when you think about the I'm trying to think of the craziest Haitian like superstitions that we have,
Mhm.
and I think about saying that to someone who wasn't black or who wasn't Haitian, and being like they're probably like, what is she
Mhm.
talking
Mhm.
about?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Even
Sure.
something simple as not putting your bag on the floor or something
Yeah.
like something
Yeah.
silly like that, and it's like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Very true.
and it's just like, cuz don't you want money? And it's and they're like, what?
Mhm.
So not feeling like you don't have to. Sorry, I'm laughing. So Sam put in something in the comment. I went over to her place and I told her that in my culture we wash our unmentionables by
Mhm.
hands.
Mhm.
She's like, what do you mean you don't throw them in the wash? I'm like,
Mhm.
I was clutching my pearls. I was like,
Mhm.
no, we do not do.
Mhm.
But just like these like fun. I mean, for me, I'm older now, so they're just kind of like, well, it is what it is. But
Sure.
for other people, it's serious. It's serious. It's their culture and this what they believe in, and
Mhm. Or like Duppy, right?
huh?
Duppies, Jamaican called ghosts, right?
Right. So, but having someone like thinking that's weird or thinking that's like stupid,
Aberrant, or even
right?
pathologizing it as psychotic or psychosis.
Right, exactly. And I think there's a fear in that as well. So,
Have you
um,
seen those videos where they're talking about the person was like engaging in like self-injurious behaviors, and when they went, it was a person just patting their weave?
oh, I did not see that. Oh no, we bet our we's on this. It's in the Beyonce song too. But
It's a
that's
good
a very,
example.
very good one. That's a very good one. Yes. So all of these things I think would cause apprehension and be like, I don't know, they may not understand me,
Sure,
And
sure.
but I think what people need to understand, and I think you highlighted that a little bit earlier, is like, you know, it's an alliance, it's a
Mhm.
collaboration, and you choose. And if it's you're with someone that's not working,
Try somebody else.
yeah.
No problem. But I
Like
also want to speak to like our white counterparts within the field and give them some credit, because they're
right.
also going to trainings and looking
Yes.
at how to be culturally competent and how to create space for what, the BIPOC population is going through. I did a training in Jamaica like a year ago, and they were there and they were showing up and they wanted to learn and they wanted to see how they can be useful to this population. So I don't want to count them out as because they're white they don't understand or they don't want to
Oh
understand.
no,
They
not at
they
all.
they're working on creating an ability to create space for that.
Right. And kudos to the ones that show cultural humility, because I think that's what it takes to be able to do that. And I think sometimes people can tend to feel like, even for myself, like just because I'm a person of color, I've never worked with all cultures, and there are certain
Mm,
things that I will need to know and I
that's
need
right.
to understand. And
That's
so
right.
I can't even, I can understand from that stance. But I think that cultural humility piece is what is important, and knowing that you're not going to know everything. And so it's
Right.
okay to be like, what does that mean? And
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
I believe you. Let's figure it out, kind of thing, and not throw it to the side, the wayside.
Right.
But you're right. I do appreciate those who are aligning, who are our allies in
Mm-hmm.
this work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So the next one is, if you're struggling, you aren't praying enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, I just don't think that that's true, right?
Right.
I think that you can pray, and like I said before, I think both are healthy and helpful, and I don't think people should feel like they have to choose one or the other. I think both can work beautifully together in with community and sort of
Right.
mental health and your own traditions and healing practices, I think that they're not necessarily in competition with one another.
Right. Yeah. And excuse me, and coming from a religious family, I can understand and see how someone would think that. I think
Hmm.
in terms of faith and not having faith, but someone said this weekend, this past couple of days, faith without works is dead. You
I
know,
was just thinking that. I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that. And
so
I honestly, I feel like I was created to do the work that I'm doing. It comes the way that I help and the passion that I bring to my career. That can't come. That's not just from me. Like that's something else, right? And so I think that it's not in competition. I think that there are
right,
people who feel, and there are also religious therapists, right? People that practice
right,
within that
right.
realm. So I again, it just doesn't feel like it's two things that have to be separate.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. Absolutely. Um, Last myth, and
Okay.
you just alluded to it actually. It says my ancestors and family had it worse, so I don't have a right to feel how I do.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I don't think that there needs to be. I don't think that it's
Right,
helpful to have that comparison, right? I think that pain is pain no matter the source or where it's coming from. And there is no reason to sort of invalidate what you're going through because someone else had it worse. Because again, worse is very subjective, right?
right,
But so if something horrific or traumatic happens to you, let's deal with that and how that, affects you. Doesn't matter that, this person that happened to them or this happened to them. We care about them as well. And we want for them to have, the help. If they don't want to accept it, that's different. But you deserve to be able to have what you're going through validated and addressed.
right. Yes. I think we at Push understand that very well. I think a lot of times because we've experienced stillbirth, people who've had like miscarriages or ectopic pregnancies and things like that. Well, I've had personal experience where people are like, well, it's not the same. It's not the same kind of loss. You're right, it's not the same kind of loss. But
It's
yet you
still
still
us.
experience a loss. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it would be wrong of me to not validate that or to say mine is greater than yours, right?
Mhm.
And so I think it, in a sense it's a not a defense mechanism, but like a fear of rejection in a sense, or like, I don't want you to be like, girl, you just
I'm
had
gonna
a
call
miscarriage.
exactly. I'm gonna
Yeah.
call it out before anyone else does.
Right. And
Mhm.
so but understanding, like, when you go to therapy, your therapist is there for you,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah, just
That's
for
right.
you, and building you and helping you to gain and to get at whatever mental health goals that you have, and
Yeah.
that is it,
And
Mhm.
for us, a win is a win, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to like helping somebody to graduate college or helping someone to
Mhm.
get a promotion or whatever it might be, to helping someone overcome psychosis and to get back a sense of grounding in reality, right? A win is a win, right?
Right, right, right.
We enjoy helping people no matter what they're going through.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said psychosis, because I think, and going back into the cultural piece on a psychosis and someone who, like, is kind of like uh
Superstitious.
not superstitious, but like a dreamer, the person, like a prophecy.
Mhm.
They see things, they're clairvoyant in that sense, where they can see things in dreams.
Sure.
Having that fear of like going to therapy and saying, yeah, well, I had a dream, because some people, they're very like clear-minded and they dream stuff and stuff happens.
Yeah,
It's happened to me.
me
And
too.
so you go to therapy and say, I had a dream that such and such happened, and da, 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 and they're like, and people are have a
Sure.
fear of quickly being diagnosed,
Yeah.
right? Or being
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, oh, she's having psychosis," and it's
Yeah.
like, no, that's not what it is.
Yeah. It's also important, I think, for folks to talk through the diagnosis with their
Yes,
therapist. Like sometimes that's not done often enough. I think sometimes it's like very clear, right? You're coming in
right,
for depression. I've diagnosed you with depression, and I don't always talk through that. But if I am going to diagnose someone with like ADHD or bipolar or a psychotic disorder, you have to have a conversation about that. Like it's not, I'm just not going to
Mhm.
secretly put it in your chart.
Right, right,
Then you find out later, right? These
right,
are things that you want to talk to the person about. And when you do that, you can start to see if there was some sort of misunderstanding, and you can create more of a provide more clarification of what you meant by X, Y, or Z.
right. So for someone who's never experienced um being in therapy, what like so let's say someone came to you, right? You're one of your clients is the first time. Like, what is sort of a general expectation that they should have of like a first visit and what it would look like
Oh
moving?
my gosh, that's such a good point. That's such a good question, because I think a lot of times people go to an intake appointment and think that that was a therapy appointment, and it's not, right?
Right,
So the first two appointments that you have with a therapist, at least the first one, but the first couple sessions that you have is information gathering, right? They're
right,
asking you about your history, what you've been through, your family dynamics, these kinds of things, your symptoms, all of this. And so you're going to walk away from the appointment and you're not really going to gain much therapeutically.
right,
Maybe not. I mean, you will for me, because you're leaving
right,
here with something if you're coming to see me, right?
right,
But for a lot of people, it really is just that clear intake form, and sort of that's it. And so people walk away and they're like, well, that wasn't helpful. That wasn't therapy.
right,
That
right,
was,
right,
that was
right,
an intake appointment, right?
right,
So I
right,
think that's really important to clarify. And I try to do that with my clients as well. And I tell them, like, this is the intake, this is what's going to happen in the intake. And then when we start treatment, that's going to look a little bit different,
right.
right?
Mhm.
So, and then of course, you try to, in those early sessions, try to account for what's the person's goals, right? Like, what is your
Mhm.
treatment goals? What do you want to see happen? Like I said, coming from a managed care perspective, what symptoms are we trying to reduce? And then just coming from that solution oriented, like, what goal are you trying to accomplish? What barrier are you trying to overcome?
Right. And so, I mean, I know this, but for the audience, there are definitely different types of modalities and different ways that a therapist um, can uses to help
Mhm.
someone to reach their like therapeutic goals, right? Or teach them coping skills. Like, and you said solution focus. Do you want to explain a little more what solution focus is?
I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? So we're looking at what are the issues that you're facing, and then doing, the normal things, the brainstorming, coming up with options, weighing the pros and cons of those different choices, and getting to a solution, right?
Mhm.
Recognizing that there is some way out, even if the solution is not sort of like an actual like action that you can do, but a releasing of a thought, releasing of an expectation, right? Getting to a place where, like I said, that anxiety or that angst is starting to decrease, right?
Mhm.
And then I do cognitive behavioral therapy is sort of, what I typically work from, and DBT as well, dialectical behavioral therapy. So those are the three things that I pull from for the most part. But then also ACT, acceptance and commitment based therapy, and getting diffused from your thoughts. Like, a lot of times when people are suffering, I tell my clients all the time, you feel what you focus on, right? So
Right,
you're
right,
what you're focusing on. So if you want to change those emotions, you have to change that focal point, right? So that's something that I also pull from as well, which comes from sort of ACT, right? Just getting
Mhm.
used from those thoughts that I'm
Mhm.
not my thoughts. My thoughts are not always accurate. Whereas CBT, you more so will look for the fallacies and what's
Mhm.
right versus what's wrong. With ACT, you're just like, I don't have to pay this any mind. It's just a thought, and I'm going
Right,
to move on with my day, right? And
yeah,
so for some people, there's utility in both.
right. Hmm. Yes, and I think you know, and that's something that's probably a mystery too when you're going like, what exactly does the therapist do? And you know, wanting the audience to know that there are modalities, right?
Mhm.
Evidence-based modalities that therapists
Exactly.
use to be able to support you to help you learn coping skills or whatever it is, the skill that you need to help you to gain control of whatever it is that's like kind of like dominating you at the time. So
Correct.
it's not willy-nilly. You don't come in and you just sit and talk, well, and you do talk, but you're gonna get some help. You're gonna
Mhm.
get navigated, right?
Mhm.
And I think, like you said, we get some people based on what they see on TV,
Right.
they have a misconception of what therapy looks like, and
Right.
it's like it's work. You got to do the work. It doesn't work if you don't work.
Doesn't work if you don't work it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. I used to tell my clients, nothing changes if nothing changes. Right.
Right. Yeah. So, and so whenever clients is like, "Oh my gosh, you're such a great therapist and you helped me do this. No, no, you helped
Mhm.
yourself by doing the work, right? It has nothing to do. I'm giving you the tools, but if you don't take the tools and you actually use them,
Correct. Nothing happens.
nothing happens.
Mhm.
Nothing happens. So I think if anything, one of the things I want people to leave here knowing is like you go to therapy, you're doing some work.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I work. I don't even say primarily. Well, I guess because I do assessments with kids, but in terms of like the therapy, the clinical work, I will only see adults. I've worked with kids before, and it was like very early on. I realized that a lot of these kids' problems are their parents, and
It's the
when you
parents fix
right,
the
and
school.
then when you try to point out like, hey, this would be a healthier way to approach this, or this is would be a healthier way to do this, and they're like, I don't care nothing about that, ma'am. I'm not changing,
Right.
right? And I was like, oh, I don't feel like helpful. Like I don't feel as helpful working in that realm as I did working with adults. And granted, I probably could have given it a more fighting chance, but like
Right.
after internship, I was like, I'm not.
Oh, you
Yeah,
know.
I did internship, and I was like, that's enough for me.
Yeah, yeah, no, you know. What is important for you, like well, I don't know if it's important, but like creating a therapeutic alliance, like what does that mean for you?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I mean, like I said before, it's the treatment, right? It's making sure that the person feels that they can be their authentic self. So creating
Mhm.
a space that feels safe and
Mhm.
they don't feel like they're going to be judged. I have clients tell me, all they tell me preemptively, like, I know you're not going to judge me, so I'm about to tell you something crazy, right?
Right, right,
They're like,
right.
they're like, you're the only person I can tell this to. Thank goodness I have you, right?
Right, right,
So creating that space where folks feel like they can be their vulnerable, raw self, and like to really see that. And I mean, like people have when I'm thinking about this, I'm also thinking about the traumas that people are sharing that they've shielded from their
yeah,
family members that they feel like it would devastate them. The family dynamics would change. Like they haven't shared it with anyone, right?
yeah.
And so creating a space where they like I can start to say something about this that has been so heavy and so shameful for them for so many years. That's a part of the therapeutic alliance is creating a space where someone feels they can do that.
Yes, and that's very important. And I think sometimes that's what holds people back sometimes for therapy, depending, I guess, on your attachment style,
Mhm.
because we start therapy and we want the first one to be the right one, and
Yes.
usually it's not.
Yeah, just like dating. I think it's like dating. You
Right,
you have to
yes,
kiss a few frogs before you find your.
right. Yes, and that's kind of hard when you're having to retell your trauma or
That's right.
retell your story, you know what I mean? And I think that can be discouraging for people, but I feel like if you stick in there, like hold on and really work towards like finding your person, then
It.
it will be something that's very, very, very life changing for people.
Yes. Yeah.
I get that. I understand that feeling of just like, oh my gosh, I have to, even when we're transferred, like in our group practice,
Yes.
even when we're transferring from
It's
one
hard. One session to
therapist to
another.
another, it's like, do I have to tell my whole story again? And it's like, oh no, you don't. I'll read the notes. I'll read the notes, but yeah, like but I do want to get it from your perspective.
That's right.
So it can be very, very difficult. But once you do have that alliance, it's amazing. It's an amazing thing. And then sometimes we just gotta tell people you can fly now.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And they don't want to fly because they want to.
It's true too. That's true too.
Oh, would you?
Yeah.
What do you enjoy about being a psychotherapist, and what's challenging for you?
I think the thing that's most enjoyable is sort of watching people get better and watching people accomplish their goals. Like, I'm their personal cheerleader, cheering them on through all these different things that they're trying to accomplish. So when they are able to graduate from school, become therapists themselves, or, get married and live healthy, happy lives, like that's super, super important. I might tear up, but I've had people literally tell me that I've saved their lives, that
Mm,
they were thinking about committing suicide. And in the moment, they remember something that I said, which I'm
right,
like, what was that? Because I may need to share that with somebody else.
right, right, right.
Like, literally, the work that we do, it's like, it not only is it life changing, it can be life saving.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it is. It's a lot. I think. So you tell me what the challenging parts can be for you.
So challenging, I would say, is like you have your own life and your own traumas and your own history and your own microaggressions that you experience, and you experience the larger society just like everyone else is, right? And so managing what you have going on when someone else is going through something very similar, that can be very heavy, right? You can feel sort of triggered in some of those types of sessions. Also, just like in general with that, right? The vicarious trauma of listening to the most heinous things that people have been through and have had done to them on a regular basis. Like,
Mhm.
this is what the job calls for, is that, throughout the week, I'm going to be hearing about sexual abuse. Throughout the week, I'm going to hear about, physical abuse. I'm going to hear about deaths and all of these things throughout. And that's just a normal week, right?
Right, right.
Is something that is challenging, is sort of managing the empathy that you have for people and what they're going through, with like, taking care of yourself in those moments as well.
And how do you take care of yourself? How do you, are you one of those people? Because I know for me, I put the laptop down unless something is like crisis, I can let go.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
not everyone can. It took me a while to get there.
Sure, sure. I think the same for me as well. I think there are times where I've questioned, like, I can't do this. Like, I
Right.
can't hear about this every single day, day in and day out, right? And
Mhm.
so that was a specific place where I was working. There's, you know how it is. Like, you might work at a clinic, and most of the clients that are coming in for a particular issue, whether it's domestic violence or sexual abuse or drug abuse or whatever it might be. And so I just learned that, like, I have to diversify what I do as a clinician. Like, I can't just see clients one on one. I have to also do groups. I have to also do
Mhm.
assessments, because that, like, variation helps me to stay sort of grounded.
Right. Yes. Um, and is one of the, well, I don't know if this would be considered self care, but one of the ways that I found you is I saw one of your reels, right?
Which
And
one was it?
even though you don't want to consider yourself an influencer, I won't call you an influencer.
Uh-huh.
It was the one where the when you were telling the audio where it was just like about the boyfriend,
Oh,
just
you don't got to be with that man.
right, let him go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
don't break up with him. Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so I saw that. I was like, oh, this is funny. And for me, I find it interesting. I've seen many therapists who are like who do reels and they're funny. And I was just like, what a good way to kind of like to kind of like both bring both worlds right
Mhm.
together, like being a therapist and just like fun and ease. And so what made you get into that? Like how did you start doing that?
I just I just like do I like I feel like I'm a funny person. I feel like I have a good sense of humor. And when
Right.
people are around me, they tend to enjoy laughing and enjoy the things that I say. And so I'm like, this is what I should be doing. Like, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy sort of the feedback and bringing, like, some light to a very, like, heavy and dark sort of topic, right? And I hope and pray and wish that people don't take everything that I post seriously, because, again, these are audios that I just, like, stumbled upon and just thought, like, it'd be funny
Right, right, right,
it
right.
like this, right?
Yeah.
But I think I really just enjoy being able to share a side of myself that's not just like this serious, like, therapist. I met someone, actually, and I she saw my Instagram page, and then I met her in person, and she was like, "Oh, I didn't think you'd be anything like this. Like, you're just so, like, like, down
Right,
to earth and real, and not this, like, uptight, type of person that
right.
folks might think you are from just, like, the profession, how you might present."
Yeah. And I saw your disclaimer and I was like, I wonder why she had to put that up there. That real is not therapy.
Real is, first of all, let real is absolutely not therapy. And
Right.
people will comment, and you know how people are. The comment section is going to be filled with, like, praise and hate, right?
Right.
So you're getting both sides. But I do think it's important for people, even the people that like it, that they realize that, like, this is not really therapy. This is not
Right.
what you really experience. I think you like this, but this is not what it would really look like, right?
Right.
You
Right.
have, like I said, in order to be exposed to therapy, you have to go to therapy. You can't watch it on TV. You can't read a book about it. You need
Right.
to sit across from a therapist, and that's how you're going to know what it's like.
Right. And I think one of the things and going, I'm backtracking a little bit when I think about and thinking about this national minority mental health month. I think one of the, you know, kind of blocks uh for minorities can be like the affordability and being able to afford to go to
Yeah, very
therapy,
true.
you know, lack of insurance, lack of money.
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but a lot of like people in our field are becoming more self-pay now, not wanting to like deal with insurance companies
Sure.
and things like that. And it can be a little bit discouraging. And but there's still you know, companies, private companies, not private, but like practices that do take insurances. I know of one in New York called Shift Your Journey, you know.
ThriveWorks here in Georgia, and they're nationwide as well.
What's it called?
ThriveWorks.
Oh, ThriveWorks. Okay, that's good to know. ThriveWorks. Do you know of one in California?
I think so. I think they do have them.
Oh, and as well.
They're all over the place.
Okay, gotcha.
Hmm.
Yes, and so you know, wanting to remind people to not allow that to stop them because not everyone is private pay. You know,
That's
there are
right.
many companies that you know, will take insurance.
Absolutely.
You know, even and I
You don't even have to do the work. You just call
right,
your insurance company and they will tell you exactly where to go. They'll tell you who you're in network with. So
right,
it's not even that you have to do a bunch of research. You just kind of see where your insurance company wants you to go.
right, exactly. Also another uh a link that people can go to, a website that people can go to search for BIPOC a therapist is Therapy for Black Girls. That's the place that people can go to, and it's amazing because it's like you can put whatever state that you're in, and you'll find all of the therapists of color that
Mhm.
live in that state. All the group practices, they tell
Sure,
you if they take insurance, they don't take insurance.
sure.
I think there's one for black men as well.
It's
Um,
here in Georgia, if you use Sonder Mind, that's another one of these websites where you can go and see, you type in what insurance you have, they see if they accept that insurance, and then you can like tailor what you're looking for. If you're looking for like an EMDR therapist, CBT therapist, you're looking for a male, you're looking for a younger therapist, an older therapist, Hispanic, black, whatever, you just put in what you're looking for and it'll create like these different, it'll show you their different profiles.
it's called Sonder
Sonder
Mind.
Mind.
Okay, Sonder, like
SON.
like a
D.
sunder. Okay.
Mhm.
Also, there is um, Therapy for Black Men as well. That's another website that people can go to. Black men can go to. I'm sure BIPOC and any BIPOC men can go to look for a therapist as well. So there are we gave you guys several avenues, several
Mhm.
resources to go to if you are in need of a therapist.
That's right.
To not allow um, excuses to get in the way, right? That's
Yeah.
um,
And getting in contact with your local resource line, I think 211 is it like sort of nationally, that 211 line where you get in touch with like local resources and it'll get you to nonprofits and different things
right.
that you can afford and take advantage of.
Yeah, I think for New York we're 311.
Hmm.
So yeah, 311 is another place to that people
Here
can
in Georgia,
call.
too, 988 is a good line.
988.
Hmm.
Yes. So we're to anyone who's watching who needs resources, hopefully you're able to go back and watch the replay, and you can pull out all of these resources to be able to find a therapist, right?
Hmm.
And allow um uh, money, hopefully, to hold us back from getting the support and the help that we need.
That's right.
And for those who can't afford to, go for it. You know, I think we all need therapy. Do you have your own therapist?
I've had, and she like fired me because I was too healthy. So, yeah.
I haven't gotten
It's
fired
like it's
yet.
time to go. It's time to go.
I love it. If I have fired, you
Yeah.
know, it's so funny. I should have gone actually when I lost my son. Um, I should have gone to therapy, but at the time, nothing was accessible.
Hmm.
There was no group therapy, no, and it wasn't perinatal focused. It was more like broad loss, and it's not
Yeah.
the same. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it's not.
Yeah.
So I never did it, but my mom, who's my bestie, passed away 3 years ago,
Oh,
and that's when I realized I was like,
yeah,
can't do this by myself,
that's
and I
right.
got a lot of support, and I'm at a by the time I started the therapy, I was in a good space, but I still felt like, you know what, you can always use the extra support. So
Agreed.
let's do it. So I've
Agreed.
been doing it. I haven't gotten fired yet. Hopefully I get fired in a year or two.
Eventually.
Eventually.
Mhm.
Um, what I have two more questions for you before I let you go. I'm looking at the time. But what are your future goals? What do you see Dr. Styles doing in like 5 years?
I'm hoping to have people. My like I right now I have my own private practice, but it's like employee of one, owner of one. You know what I mean? It's just me. It's a one man show. So I'm hoping to expand and to start to hire people to work with me and do the work that I find meaningful. So at some point, I think that's where I will be heading. And right now, right, like you said, I'm like a budding influencer, right, with my
Right,
couple
right, right,
but I think I'll get there, right? I think I'll get, like I said, where my sister's at. So I
right.
think, that's going to be something, on the horizon. And also books. I'm working on a book right now, like a journal book for folks to be able to identify, things about themselves, coping skills, that kind of stuff. And so hopefully I can get that out either at the end of the year or the top of next year.
Is there like a particular like niche? Do you feel like you have a niche?
So in the past, it's been domestic violence. Like I've worked a lot with women survivors of IPV. So that has been something. And then, like I said, like the forensic assessments that I do. That's probably what I'm most passionate about right now.
Okay.
Mhm.
And lastly, what do you do for fun?
Oh, for fun. I love to travel. I love to travel. I've been to 16 countries and 16
Oh.
states and two territories. So I like to get around. I like to get around.
And are you able to like really let
No,
go when you I didn't even finish this one.
no. So sometimes I am able to, like, I think for my birthday this past year, that was the only time that I didn't bring my work phone, which is right here. Like the only time I didn't bring my work phone, and I was off for like a complete, I think I was off for 8 days, and I just did not work, did not check my emails, didn't care if it piled up to 120 emails when I came back. I was like, it's my birthday, that's it. And so I really want to start. All my family is always encouraging me because I'm on vacation and then I'm there with my laptop and I'm like, all right, I'll see you guys in a bit. I've got a report to write. Right. So I want to start
Oh.
traveling without the laptop.
Oh my gosh. So okay, so recently was the first real vacation that you
In
had.
a while. Yeah. In a while.
Were
Yeah.
you alone?
Because
Did
even
it,
when I go to Jamaica, I still have the laptop, or something. Like I said, the last time I went was for a training as well. I'll go to visit different, family members and friends throughout the states, and I'm still working. And a lot of times they'll say that to me, like, next time maybe when you come, like, don't do so much work.
right, right, right. Is it can it be challenging for you to say, okay, you know what? I'm going on vacation.
I think the challenging part is just knowing what's piling up. And like for me, it just doesn't seem worth it to allow it to pile up. So in the past, I just haven't. I'm not kidding. If I don't check my emails for a certain amount of time, it's like 100 emails to check. Like I'm not exaggerating, right? So I when I'm on vacation, it makes more sense, day by day to check those things so that at the end when I come back, I'm not overwhelmed.
Got it. Well, therapists has to take care of themselves as
Oh
well.
yeah. No, I eat well, I exercise, I do Pilates, I love my Zumba class. I love, eating healthy and getting outside, going for walks. So I do definitely take care of myself. But the traveling is the most fun for me.
Mm. And
Mhm.
do you have certain routines that I mean, we don't have to have routines, but do you have a certain routines before you start your day?
No.
Okay, no, no, it's okay. I tell people you
No.
don't have to have a routine.
I'm gonna tell you why I don't have a routine in the morning because I'm not a morning person.
Okay, gotcha.
So I'm waking up with just enough time to get dressed,
I love the
see the
I love the
clients.
transparency.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I have nighttime routines, but I don't have
Okay,
a
gotcha.
daytime routine.
But see, at least you have routines.
Mhm.
At least you have a. I just created a morning routine. I'm not
Okay.
typically a routine person,
Okay.
but I was just like, I think I could do this. This is good. This is helpful.
I tell myself every week that I need to wake up earlier, and it
Right.
never happens. It just never happens. I tell my it's a weekly occurrence. I'm like, okay, just a half hour. Doesn't happen.
Is it because you're home or no?
Probably. Probably.
Seriously, I mean, work
Probably.
from home sometimes if you're not deliberate into like going out, you will not go out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially because things can come to you, groceries
Everything
can come
can come
to
to you.
you,
Yeah.
so Dr. Styles, thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. We are so happy you um, imparted your wisdom to us. We
Sure.
are so thankful. Hopefully, this is not the last time, and come again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And I'm gonna tell everyone go watch Dr. Styles
I'm
reel.
funny. I
They're
am
funny. She
funny.
they're pretty funny. And hopefully everyone was able to see the resources that we put up on the ticker, so that if anyone needed some support, that you are able to do that as well. You can reach out to any of those places, and keep on keeping on, everyone. We're here for you. Thank you, and goodbye, everyone.